was really, really nice. The Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. I went to the Derby Playhouse in Clarksville, Indiana. But what we're looking at now is the Muhammad Ali Center, a vision of Ali's family. The center celebrates the life and legacy of the world-class boxer and global humanitarian. The six-story multicultural center and museum tells the story of the greatest boxer of all time, but also preserves and shares his legacy and idea of Ali as a man. And this is his museum. If you go to my Facebook page, It's Your Time to Travel. You know, I have pictures on there of his Rolls Royce. I have different pictures of the Muhammad Ali Museum, but it's just a fantastic place to visit. And if you're traveling through Louisville, this is a must-see destination. It's a fantastic place to visit. And this is the lobby of the museum, and they really get into and they really talk about some of the values that was instituted for him as a child, and of course they talk about him changing faith. They talk about him not going into the service. They also talk about him throwing his gold medal that he won in the Olympics into the Ohio River because he was disgusted with the way he was treated back in the States once he got back home. So yes, when you're in Louisville or traveling through Louisville, please visit the Muhammad Ali Center. It is 6 stories, and they also show you a video, a movie. They have a nice theater that you sit down and watch this movie about Muhammad Ali. So yeah, there's that going on. The other thing that's going on is the Evan Williams Bourbon Experience. It's an authentic Kentucky experience, and it should include some bourbon. It should include some bourbon. Kentucky is the birthplace of the drink, and this is actually the tour of the Evan Williams Bourbon Experience, which is in downtown Louisville. That's the front of the building. The state still produces 95% of the world's supply. Evan Williams Bourbon Experience. And they talk about the historic Whiskey Row, which features a distillery tours and tag strings. And they kind of get into the history of making bourbon. And when I was down there, they gave me a sip of raw bourbon, and man, it tasted just like White Lightning. And if you ever knew what White Lightning was, it tasted in the raw form. It tasted just like White Lightning. But in this tour, they show you how the bourbon is made, and they show you the different things that they use to make the bourbon, and to take the bourbon from its purest form, and they put yeast in it. So they talk a lot about how the bourbon is made, the history of bourbon, what bourbon means to Kentucky, and they also talk about Whiskey Row. They talk about the owners, Evan Williams. So if you're ever in Kentucky, if you're ever in Louisville, and you stop downtown, please take this tour. And then after the tour, you can actually go over to lunch at the Bristol Bar and Grill. And it's one of Louisville's original restaurants. It's a true local favorite. The Bristol Bar and Grill has been around for about 37 years. And it offers American Bristol fare with an extensive wine and spirit selection. So that was one of the places that I went to was the Evan Williams Bourbon Experience, and the other area was the Kentucky Derby Museum. The Kentucky Derby Museum in Churchill Downs breakfast. If you ever watched the movie Secretariat, and they show the jockeys eating in this restaurant, I was actually in that restaurant when I went to visit Louisville. The Kentucky Derby Museum in Churchill Downs breakfast is you can enjoy a southern breakfast as you watch the morning workouts of some of the finest thoroughbreds in the world. Tour the museum that is dedicated to the most excited 2 minutes in sports. The Kentucky Derby, the museum pays homage to the history of African American jockeys who rode the winners of 15 of the first 28 Run for the Roses. So this museum is totally amazing. This tour, they give you a tour of Churchill Downs. They take you out to the track. They take you to the grandstand. Right here, you can actually race as a jockey. It's an amazing museum. And then in the middle of the museum is a theater, and they show you this movie of all the things going on in the museum. And there's a lot of African American history that has to do with the Kentucky Derby, and they have sections in the museum that talks about the Kentucky Derby. And if you go to my Facebook page, It's Your Time to Travel, there's just pictures of me standing in Churchill Downs. There's pictures of me standing in the museum, and they have a really, really, really nice movie that they get into that takes about 15, 20 minutes to watch. But the museum is open 365 days a year. So if you thought the only time that you could go to the Kentucky Derby Museum was during the Kentucky Derby, this is my first time at the Derby, so I was a little bit more impressed with it, being able to tour the Derby and everything going on at the museum. So far we talked about the Evan Williams Bourbon Experience, the Kentucky Derby Museum, the Muhammad Ali Center, and I also have a video of Muhammad Ali's childhood home. His home is located in the heart of middle-class Louisville. His home used to be a tourist center. It used to be a tourist center, and his family all lived in a house during his childhood in the 1940s through the early 1960s. And there's a bronze marker which is located in front of the pink house, noting it's a historical relevance, and it gives you a photo opportunity. It's the pink house that you're looking at now. There's a story that goes with that, and the story goes that the house, or the two houses, were bought by a Las Vegas businessman, and this is actually a video, but it was bought by a Las Vegas businessman who opened the house up for tourism and tried to sell the house to the city, but the city and the businessman couldn't come to terms on what they wanted to buy the house for and what he wanted to sell the house for. So he closed the house down. But there is a marker in front of the house that indicates that it is a historical site. And neighbors in the neighborhood actually keep the grass cut and keep the place looking nice. But that's the reason why it's not open for tourism, because there's a businessman out of Las Vegas that bought the house and tried to sell the house to the city of Louisville, and they couldn't come to terms on the price. So that is Muhammad Ali's childhood home. And Louisville also has a downtown civil rights trail. It's a self-guided tour that marks the spots in downtown Louisville where nonviolent demonstrations were held against the restaurants, department stores, and other white-owned establishments that excluded African Americans altogether or treated them differently from other customers. So there's a lot of historical value that goes on in Louisville. And one of the things I'm trying to put together for a bus tour to Louisville is they have an amazing event going on called the Jack-O-Lantern Spectacular Tour. It starts in October, and what it is a walking tour of pumpkins that's put in trees and all over the place, and basically they say that there's 5,000 eyes on you when you're walking this tour, and these pumpkins are carved with different sayings and different things going on. But it's a totally amazing tour, and I'm trying to put a bus trip to go down to Louisville for this event that runs October, I think, up to November. So maybe later on we can get a hold of that video and take a look at the tour. One of the other places that I visited when I was in Louisville was the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. This summer, the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory celebrates Jackie Robinson's incredible contribution to baseball. I actually got a chance. Okay, this is the Lantern Tour, the Jack-O-Lantern Tour that goes on in Louisville around Halloween. And as you can see, there's pumpkins. Just these pumpkins are carved out, and there's about 2,500 pumpkins during this walking tour, and it's family friendly. It's a walking tour that's is pretty amazing, and you won't find this any other place in the United States. And it's just a tour that it looks like it'll be a lot of fun. It's family friendly. You can take the kids. It's a nice change to. It's a nice way to celebrate Halloween, other than trying to scare the hell out of people all the time. So this is a tour that I'm trying to put together. If you're interested, give us a call at 866-547-5362. But we were talking about the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. I visited there, and I actually got a chance to hold one of Jackie Robinson's bat. And this thing was like a piece of log. It was heavy. But they actually celebrate Jackie Robinson's incredible contribution to baseball in partnership with the Frazier History Museum. You can experience a viewing of Jackie Robinson's Breaking Barriers. This dramatic 5-minute live portrayal of Jackie Robinson takes you back to 1946, the year he signed his contract with Louisville Slugger. See his original model bat on display in the museum, which I actually held in my hand. If you go to my Facebook page, It's Your Time to Travel, there's a picture of me holding the bat. And you can see his original model bat on display in the museum and take a photo with a life-size statue of Jackie. So this is the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory that I visited probably a month ago. Had a great time there. They gave me a private tour. If you go to my Facebook page, I'm standing in this room with all these sample bats of all the major league players that played from the beginning of time to now, and how meticulous these people were about how their bats were made. And they have a short movie that they show you of where they go to New York to pick the trees to make the bats. And I was told the difference in prices in bats is depending on the different types of pine. So if you're ever in Louisville, one of the places you should visit is the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. So yeah, that's one of the many places that we visited. The other place that we went to was the Derby House. The Derby. So I talked about Bristol's. I talked about the Muhammad Ali Center. Louisville, Evan Williams. Oh, the Derby Dinner Playhouse. We actually went to that. And again, this is the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, which we visited. Had a great time there. I got a chance to hold Mickey Mantle's bat. Got a chance to hold Jackie Robinson's bat. They show you what a 90 miles per hour fastball looks like. They have a story that they tell about how bats are made, and they have demonstrations of how bats are made. So it's totally amazing. And if you're ever in Louisville, and I know a lot of times, all my life I've driven through Louisville. I've never stopped. This is the first time I've ever actually stopped in Louisville. And Louisville is just full of museums. Absolutely full of museums. It's a great place to visit. They actually tell you the history of baseball. One other place that we went to was called the Derby Dinner Playhouse. You can enjoy a delicious Southern buffet-style dinner and an evening performance at the Derby Dinner Playhouse, which is in Clarksville, Indiana. It's one of the oldest and largest continuously operating professional dinner theaters in the country, and for over 40 years, the theater has delighted audience with its production of Broadway musicals and lighthearted comedies. And I was shocked at how amazing this theater was, because the performances are done in the center of the theater. So no matter where you sit at in this dinner theater, you'll be able to see the performance, because the performances are done right in the middle of the theater. And I thought that was totally amazing. One of the shows that I saw that they did was they have current shows. It's not just local shows, but they had a Disney show that's going on. So, and this is in Clarksville, Indiana, which is right across the bridge from Louisville, and it's part of their heritage tour. And they actually put together a tour for you for 2 days if you're visiting Louisville. And they talk about the places to visit in Louisville, and the Derby Dinner Theater in Clarksville, Indiana, is one of them. And we also talked about the Louisville Slugger Museum. We talked about Evan Williams' bourbon experience. I haven't talked about the Carnegie Center. You travel across Ohio River to New Albany, Indiana, to visit the Carnegie Center and its permanent exhibits. Ordinary people, extraordinary people, men and women of the Underground Railroad. This unique exhibit explores the lives of real people, both free and enslaved, which selfish acts of courage help fugitive slaves find hope and freedom. Louisville, Kentucky, Clarksville, Indiana, New Albany, Indiana, has a great story to tell about the Underground Railroad. And it's one of the areas that would be great for students to come visit. So again, on Tires, Tours, and Travels, trying to put a tour together, first for the Jack-O-Lantern Spectacular, and then for a heritage tour to Louisville. So
you got the.
So don't forget that we're trying to get a tour together to go to Louisville. So look up in the skies, the superheroes of travel, Ricky TYUS, and we're able to take you around the world by air, land, or sea, even by flying saucer. Live on TalkTainmentRadio.com.